Professional photographers, we don't just create great images, we prevent problems before they happen. So, we're going to take on one of those preventable problems today: how to handle photo releases for business clients. And we're going to do it with clarity and confidence. Hey there, Lens Legends. Welcome to another episode of the Portrait Profit Show, where we focus on the business side of photography. I'm your host, Jim Landers, your guide on the business side. It's my mission to uplift portrait photographers to make a great income doing what they love. Each week on the Portrait Profit Show, you get tips and systems on the business side of photography designed to help you gain a mastery over marketing and sales, reducing the struggles that photographers face so you can finally get what you deserve. You are in the right place. Welcome to the Portrait Profit Show. The Portrait Profit Show is brought to you by Landers Photography School and Digital Pro Lab. For Digital Pro Lab, Amanda and her amazing, wonderful team, man, they're going to make you look and feel like a hero to your clients, because Amanda hires great people. They do great work, and it's just by default because of the people she hires. It makes it very easy to work with them. The photographs that you print with them are amazing. They've got lots of different products. If you haven't worked with digitalprolab.com, oh my goodness, you need to do that. Just go to digitalprolab.com and you're going to see the difference that Digital Pro Lab can make. digitalprolab.com. And of course, Landers Photography School, my company. I teach both the photography side and the business of photography side, both group classes and private classes. And so I request that you look at my website that you see on the screen right there. But here's an even better option: a free quick meeting with me, just 15 minutes, and we'll talk about you and your goals and what direction, what path that you can take to get there. So take advantage of the URL that's on the screen right now, and I'll say it for those of you that can't see it. I know that it's tiny when it's on Instagram, and so it's calendly.com, Calendly, not calendar, calendly.com /photo school /15min. That's for 15 minutes with me, just to talk about you and what your goals are. That's a direct link to my calendar. Take advantage of that right now. I encourage you to make comments and ask questions throughout this discussion. I want you to go to the comment section right now and enter in hashtag live. I can see that some of you have already done that. Thank you for doing that. Enter in hashtag live. This tells me that you're watching today on either Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or YouTube. We're simulcast to several different places. So for those of you who are watching the replay, please comment hashtag replay. But the rest of you are watching live right now, enter in hashtag live. I also request that you share the Portrait Profit Show. Let other people know about this show. That's how you found out about it. Somebody told you. So you do the favor to someone else. Share the Portrait Profit Show. On Facebook, it's easy. You just click the share button, and you can click in the comment section. You can hit @ and then their name, and that will help them know that this show exists. I want to paint a picture in your mind for you. You walk into a corporate session, and that just means you're working with a company as a client. You may have an individual you're talking to, a contact person, but it's a company. Now, it could be a big company, it could be a small company, it could be a company of one. It doesn't really matter. It just matters in this instance that we're talking about a company that you're working with. So you walk into a corporate session to photograph the employees and the groups or group. You've got your gear. You're juggling mental notes about what you're going to be doing: lighting, posing, where to stash your cases so you look organized and professional. The HR manager walks up, smiling, greeting you with excitement, and says, "Oh, by the way, do you need a photo release signed from each employee?" Do you need a photo release signed from each employee? And suddenly you're not thinking about lighting anymore. You're thinking, wait, do I need that? This lesson today is for that moment. Now, there's a lot of times when you may need a model release. It's the same, a model release, a likeness release, a, a photo release. These are all the same thing, just by different names. But let's untangle this together, practically and simply, and hopefully with a bit of fun, so you can walk into your next corporate session sounding calm, confident, and professional. First, what's really going on? When a company hires you to photograph their team, there are two separate uses in play. There could be more, but there's two base reasons, two base uses in play. The first is their use: the company website, social media, recruiting pages, brochures, ads, internal newsletters. The second is your use. You might use it in your portfolio, your website, your social media. Maybe you enter into competitions. Maybe you're making a brochure about your business. Both involve people's likenesses. Therefore, both may require consent. But these are not the same thing. So let me tell you, let me share maybe some considerations to consider, to think about. This is not a copyright discussion. You own the copyright to the images you create the moment you create them. You can use the images that you create for your marketing purposes. However, you may consider it a gray area, or maybe you consider it a definite area when you're using the likeness of someone to help advertise your work. Now, go back years ago, and this is a non-issue. If you created it, you can use it for your advertising, except in extreme instances. But now we need to think about the potential liability or the potential problems or headaches that could come for you and for your client. So the company and you both may need permission to use the person or their identity in the image for certain purposes. So that's where releases come in. Now, I know that there's people watching from other places other than the US, so I'm going to lean this very much in the US direction. So in the US, that generally falls under privacy and right of publicity considerations. And laws do vary by state. I'm in Texas, so I am definitely leaning in that direction. So, and those of you who work outside the US, laws vary by country, of course. So, this lesson is not legal advice. Always consult a qualified attorney in your area. Now that we've positioned that clearly, let's get practical. Whose job is the employee release? Whose job is that? Here's where most photographers' knowledge is a little fuzzy. The company is the one publishing employee photographs, potentially on their website, LinkedIn, brochures, ads, recruiting campaigns, several different places. That means the company is the one that needs to be sure it has the valid permission from its employees to use those images. Now, you may think, I am the one creating them. I am giving them permission to use those images. Yes, you're giving them permission to use your copyright. You don't have the power to give them permission to use those individuals' likenesses. That is what we're talking about today. The company or organization, in almost every real world scenario, the employer should be responsible for a handful of things. Let's tell you what those are. So, providing an employee or photo, a likeness release. They call it whatever they want, but a photo release, a likeness release, a promotional release. I've heard it called many different names. The company or organization needs to know which employees have signed and which have not. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. They need to decide how to handle those who refuse. We're going to talk more about that in just a moment. But you're the person they hired to make their employees look good. You're not acting as an arm of their HR or filling in as their attorney. You're not responsible for collecting their internal employment documentation, which this falls under. So, what do you say when they ask? They're going to say something along the lines of, do we need or do you need a release? Here's maybe a polished answer you can keep in your back pocket. Now, I want you to use the things that I'm telling you, but I want you to use them as a starting point. I want you to take the words I'm using, and I have templates for today as well. I'll show them on the screen, but you get them when you ask for today's handout. By the way, to get any handout of any of the Portrait Profit shows, Portrait Profit show is on every single Monday, and every single Monday I have a handout if you want it. And to get the handout, all you do is send me an email, jim@portraitprofits.com, jim@portraitprofits.com. You can also enter into the comment section the hashtag handout, and that will also be a way for me to get it to you. All right, so here's some words to use for how your company will be using these images on your website, social media, and other marketing. I suggest that you, as the employer, have an employee photo or likeness release or promotional release. Your HR or legal team should provide and keep those forms. Now, I can share a sample for them to review, but it's really their document. It's not mine. So this is what you would tell them in response to, what do you say when they ask? That is interesting. Short, clear, and professional responses for this kind of thing. You are simply being as helpful. You're being helpful as a professional who cares about them. That's your goal. You are simply being helpful as a professional who cares about them, and possibly offering them a sample photo release, which again, I'm going to include the template if you request that today's handout, so you don't have to figure this out. And I'll show you on the screen here in just a bit. In fact, I can put that up on the screen now. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Oh, that's so small. Let's make that big. There we go. All right. So you're not giving legal advice, but you are making it clear that it is their responsibility and not yours. So, as a best practice, employee photo releases are ideally part of a company's onboarding process, not before each photo session, each time they do a photography session with a photographer, but part of their onboarding where they just comment, because they may do, they may take their cell phone and do images and put them on a Facebook page. They need to have this in place already, but you need to be careful on how you phrase that. You suggest it, you don't prescribe it. So here is a suggested employee release starting point that you're seeing on the screen right now. So to make this easier for your client, I've created a simple employee photo, video, and likeness release, promotional release, whatever you want to call it. that you can share as a starting point. This document is not legal advice. It's a practical framework designed to help companies think through appropriate permission language. Their HR or legal department should always review and customize it before using it. Now, what if this is a one person business? Well, it's a one person business now. It may not remain that way. They still need to be aware of this, although they probably will not need this. But there are some things that I'm going to be sharing here in a little while that they will. So, providing a sample like this does not mean you are taking on legal responsibility. It means you're prepared. You're offering structure. Let me take that back off. You're offering structure. You're making their job easier. And you know what? That's just one of many examples that separates a professional photographer from someone who's just showing up with a camera and smiling and being nice. So let's talk about a simple guide that you can share with your client. And let's see. I moved ahead too far. There we go. In addition to the suggested sample release, I've created a one-page suggested guide to employ photo releases that you can share directly with your client's HR or legal team. It outlines in plain language why employee releases matter, who should provide the release, when employees should sign, what to do if someone refuses, how to prepare before the session. It's not a legal document, it's a clarity document. Some HR departments simply haven't thought through this workflow. So you're giving them a clean, organized guide that positions you as someone who anticipates issues before they become problems. This is about being operationally prepared. I'm going to put that on the screen. Again, that is tiny. Probably can't see that very well, so I apologize for that. But that's part of the handout, to the handout, and I've also included in the handout, in addition to the templates, is a template for this where it's just the text. This right here is an image file, but I'll include the text so that you can make the changes that you need so that you can use it yourself. So that's that. Now let's talk about the refusal. If someone were to refuse to sign this agreement with their company, let's say the company follows your advice and sends out releases. What happens if an employee says, nope, not signing that? This is a great example of where planning matters. So let's talk about a few key realities here in this situation. An employee may refuse to sign. That happens. The company should not use that employee's identifiable image in any marketing if that employee refused. You only discover refusals after the photography session. Suddenly, some of your group images may become unusable. That's why we have to do this ahead of time. That's why it's smart to encourage the client to sort this out in advance. This is where planning becomes elite level professionalism. You might phrase it like this in an email. One thing to keep in mind: an employee can choose not to sign the release. It's much easier for everyone if you know who has and hasn't consented before the session. That way, we can plan who's included in the marketing images and avoid creating unusable images. Now, that's how you'll say it, that's how you'll present it. And in fact, let me share with you a message. That's an email that I sent just recently, just a few days ago, to a client. They asked the question, do you need a model release. So they said a photo release. Do you need a photo release? And so this is the email that I sent to them, and it has the information of that they should do this. It's up to them if they feel it's appropriate. I think they do. I recommend that they do. I suggest really less than recommend. But the goal is not to put on the legal hat because I don't have that. But I want to make them aware. And so this goes to them, and you can see there's an attachment there. This will also come in your handout. So all that stuff's part of it. By the way, I only charge $10 for my handouts for the week, and you don't have to pay if you don't want to. I send you the handout each that you request. I send that to you with an invoice for $10. You take a look at what it is, and you pay it if you want to. You don't if you don't. I don't do any accounting on it. I won't remember who I sent it to and who I didn't. And so if you want to pay, great. If you don't want to pay, fine. I'd rather you had the information. So there's that. Now, to your client, you're not just the photographer. You're the calm, knowledgeable voice that prevented a future potential headache. So let's talk about public facing versus internal use of images. Public facing versus internal use. Be specific when discussing image usage. Public facing uses might include a company website, LinkedIn profiles, recruiting campaigns, social media, press releases, advertising, brochures, and other printed marketing. That's the public facing purposes or uses of those images that you're creating. But there's also internal uses that they might include. And if someone has refused to sign for promotional reasons, it might be that they're still fine though with you using it on internal things like the intranet pages, the internal newsletters, onboarding and training presentations, procedure manuals, employee directories, internal only types of communications. When an employee refuses the photo release, the company has got to decide between one of two things. First, photograph them for internal use only, or do not photograph them at all. This isn't something you as the photographer get to decide. The company decides this, and it is their responsibility to make you aware. But you must request that information. They're busy. It's easy for them to forget this. They are thinking about the end result, the goal that they need. They're not thinking about all the different variables. So it's up to you as the pro who does this every day to inform them of it. As always, you need to know the outcome before you start photographing and arranging people in front of your camera. You've heard the cliche or the saying, begin with the end in mind. We have to know all the variables in order to see that. Now let's talk about group photography, because planning is going to save you in some instances. Now, we're kind of getting into some practical strategy. Let's say you're photographing a group of 15 people and an employee declined that marketing consent, that promotional consent, that photo release. If you don't know that in advance, you risk creating a beautiful group image that cannot be used. You're risking spending time retouching an image that won't ever be used. Now, what happens if you are told during? Well, then you get to not have that awkward mid-session repositioning. You avoid the awkward, can you step out of the photograph moment? You get to avoid that by planning in advance. Here are some practical solutions that you can suggest to your client. Now, this is ahead of time. The first is create a marketing cleared group. That way you can create different things that you need to do. Let's say you need to create a hero group, defined here as the primary group image likely to be used on the website recruiting major marketing. This should include only employees cleared for public use, of course. Then photograph a full team version for internal use. You're going to want to make sure that you label those files to make it very easy for them to use them, and so that you are helping them out to not make any mistakes. Number two, the second suggestion is plan layered composites. Composites. There are a lot of photographers that do composites. There's a lot of photographers who have never done composites. But if needed, or if it's the appropriate choice, photograph individuals separately and composite the group image. That way they aren't all in one, and it's easy to take someone out. There's advantages all the way around to that, but not everybody uses that particular tool. But it is an option. The third is strategic positioning. So when composites aren't a good solution, place those individuals who have chosen not to be in the outward facing, the public facing images, place them on the edges so it's easy for you to take them out of the image, or pay someone to do the retouching on that. But most photographers have figured out how to take people out. But if you're photographing a group and someone's kind of in the middle that you need to take out, it becomes real obvious that you've done something odd. But if they're on the very edge, can't tell. The fourth suggestion is separate internal portraits. So photograph internal use only employees separately, with the understanding that those images are not for public release. And so you're making an image of the group that is just of those who agreed, and you're adding in those who did not agree. Now you're calling them out when you do that. They need to be aware this is going to happen. This isn't something that you are responsible for telling them, though. This is something the company is responsible for telling them. What about former employees? This does not need to become complicated, but it should be acknowledged. If an employee signs a release and later leaves the company, the answer is usually, well, it usually depends on the wording of the release. So whether it allows indefinite use, whether revocation is permitted and how that applies. The suggested release provided includes language stating that consent remains in effect indefinitely unless revoked in writing, and that revocation does not affect uses made prior to the written notice. That kind of clarity protects the company, and by extension, it protects you from being dragged into disputes. Again, this is why their HR or legal team should review and approve their release. Not you. You're helping out. You're making suggestions. That's it. But let's talk about you. Let's talk about your uses, what you're going to be using what you could potentially be using the images for. Everything so far really has been about the client's responsibility with its employees. But we must also take some time to talk about your rights and what you're going to be doing. Separately, you should think about your model release from your own point of view, your own uses. Just because the company has an employee release does not mean that you have permission to use those images in your own marketing. You may or may not need it, but if you feel you do, here are some typical scenarios where your release helps you. Here's one. Showing the images on your website, posting images on your social media, or other marketing that features people from that session. Now, strictly legally speaking, you are able to use the images that you create as marketing to help you sell more, book more business. Yep, that's the truth. Yes. However, if you're using the likeness of someone else, we need to have them sign something that says they are good with that. Now, does that mean you have to have it every single time? And there's never going to be a problem, or no, chances are there won't be a problem even if you don't have something signed. But why risk that? It's so easy to just include that kind of language in your contract. Now, if you are photographing one individual, one family, that's easy. When you're photographing a group, your contact person is not going to be able to sign for everybody. So therefore, it could be a pain to get everybody to sign. So that's where your purposes, your uses come in. You need to know ahead of time what you're going to be doing with your images. For instance, some photographers enter competitions or use those images in presentations. You have to know, you need to know what the potential is for that, the uses of the images you create, so that you can make decisions on whether you need to have something signed by those individuals. So you've got two options. Neither is complicated, but both require intention. So, first option, one combined form. The company's lawyer modifies their release to also grant you permission as the photographer to use those images of each individual, however you photograph them in your marketing. It's simple, but it requires the client's legal team to cooperate and draft properly. So it's not one that I recommend. It is appropriate in some instances, though. So generally speaking, it's not one I recommend, but I can see the uses of it. Option B, though, your own separate release. This is the one I recommend. So you bring a short, photographer-friendly model release that covers your use only. Now, this is best done as an app that you've got on your phone or your iPad or your laptop. You can also do this on paper, where you've got the forms that they're short. You can do them on half sheets, not a full piece of paper. You can do them on a half sheet of paper. There's just not a lot of wording on it. You can get everyone to sign it as they come to the camera. Either that or an app. Either way, whatever works best for you in your situation. So again, this covers your use only. That's your portfolio, your website, the marketing that you use, that you do for your business. You get it signed directly by each and every employee, depending on, sometimes it's by a company, but depending on your situation and your lawyer's advice, but generally it's each individual. Whichever route you go or prefer, the important thing is don't assume. You don't always have rights to use the images in your marketing because you're using someone's likeness. That's the reason. Their usage rights, the company's usage rights, and your usage rights are simply two different things. Now, we don't want to sound like a lawyer. So keep your language simple, only make suggestions, comment that they need to do this themselves, and reach out to their own legal team. Don't put yourself in a difficult or any type of legal situation by coming across as an expert in this area. You are an expert at photography and you have seen some things, and you're going to share those so that you help them to avoid any potential problems. Say things like, I'm not an attorney, but from a practical standpoint, your HR or legal team handles employee releases. Pretty simple. You could say, I'm happy to share a sample release as a starting point, but you'll want your lawyer to review and adjust it. Maybe you say, once you know who can appear in your marketing images, tell me, and I'll plan the group and individual images around that. That's it. You're not diagnosing, prescribing, you're not quoting statutes. You're setting expectations and protecting both yourself and your client. Now, let's talk about a simple workflow that you can recommend to your clients. You don't manage their paperwork, but offering a clean structure makes you look like the seasoned pro that you want to be perceived as. So here's a simple process you can recommend. HR sends the release in advance. Ideally, a photo release is included in a new hire onboarding process that covers everything the company does. But if they don't do that, or if they haven't ever done that, or don't want to do that, this can be emailed out before photo day for each one of them to sign it. Employees have time, and it can't be done the day before. It needs to be done well in advance. So employees have time to ask questions, to think about it, to decide without any time pressure. Number two, HR tracks those who signed. The company keeps track of those who signed. They keep a simple list. It's got three parts: cleared for marketing use, promotional use; B, number two, internal use only; and three, do not photograph at all. Those are just the three categories for their employees. Now, they're going to need to brief you about this before the session. You don't need to see their forms. You don't need to see their signatures on their forms. You don't need any of that. Now, let's bring this all together. By the way, I want to remind you that this handout is available, and let me put that on the screen again. If you want the handout, just send me an email at jim@portraitprofits.com telling me you want the handout. And it includes all the templates, all the words that we've been using. And I'll send that to you. Or do a hashtag handout if you want to put that on whatever platform that you're watching this show on. By the way, if you do that now, hashtag now, I'm going to get it. If you do it in 5 days from now, I'm unlikely to see it. So that's why Jim@portraitprofits.com is really the better way to go. Jim@portraitprofits.com. And if you're asking, because I do this every single week, please include which episode you want. This is episode 258. 258. In fact, I'll put that on the screen. There we go. Episode number 258. So let me share with you some closing thoughts. I want to bring this all together. Here's the big picture. The employer owns and manages the employee photo releases. By the way, that is an example I'm put on the screen right now. That is an example of a promotional use release. That's for you to give to them. Again, this template is another one that's included. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 templates that are included in this. That's unusual. I often have a template that's included, but I don't usually have 4 that are included. But that's one of them. You offer guidance and maybe a sample release and a clear workflow, but never legal authority. Encourage them to sort releases before the session so you don't create unusable images. Consider your own model release for your portfolio, for your marketing, for your uses, your purposes. Review your contracts to make sure that what you have, what you need is included and that it's clear. Speak clearly, kindly, confidently. I mean, you're making their life easier. And all of that's a real upgrade in working with a professional photographer. You're not a person who just takes pictures. You're a guide who helps clients avoid problems they didn't even know existed. That's the kind of photographer people remember and recommend and rebook. As I wrap up this episode, I want to share with you next week's show. And I'll put that on the screen. That's better. choosing your board of advisors. Now, that might sound like something only a big company is going to use, but no, you need this. Even if you're just one person, you need a board of advisors. Now, it won't be the same as a board of directors or something that a big company might have, but you need a board of advisors, people who are in your circle. And you may think, well, I've got that up here. Yeah, I want you to write it down and I'm going to tell you why next week. I want you to put on the schedule every Monday at noon. Now, on the second Monday of each month, we move it to 6:30 in the evening so that we allow other people who can't make it at noon to be able to see the show. But for the most part, every Monday at noon. This next one is Monday at noon. In fact, let's put that there on the schedule. Choosing your board of advisors. Um, this one is about knowing who is on your side and who is in your court. There's a lot of variables here. You're going to be surprised at how many people are in your circle and where they fall and what their purpose is, and how some of them have a similar responsibility or a similar effect on you, but they're in different areas of your life. They may. So this actually is a kind of a part two to what we did last week, but you're going to be pleasantly surprised. Maybe I'll say another word about that here in a second. But as we wrap up this episode, remember this. When you photograph people for business use, you're stepping into additional responsibility. It's just how it is. Handling photo releases correctly, it's it isn't about being cautious, it's about being prepared. It's about understanding where your responsibility begins, where it ends, and how to guide your clients without wearing the attorney hat. That's what professionals do. They don't just show up with the camera, they think ahead. They put structure in place. They prevent problems before they surface. So keep operating at that level and your business will reflect it. I want to thank you, Lens Legends, for your time and attention here today. You know what? Thank you for the hard work that you put in every single day to build a photography business that matters, that makes a difference. I'll see you next Monday at noon when we build your championship support team. Make sure to put it on your calendar. You're busy. You've got a lot of stuff going on. Again, every Monday at noon, just add it to your calendar. Make it easy. For Landers Photography School and Digital Pro Lab, I'm Jim Landers, and this is the Portrait Profit Show. You guys are awesome. I look forward to watching you grow. Bye for now.